This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed. Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USAPrepares.com. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
I am blessed. Especially, I didn't think that has into the article yesterday on nitric oxide regulating gene expression.
Let's talk about that.
That to me is very exciting.
Well, I can tell you that everyone here, and including some of our cats, one chicken.
The only person I know who spoon feeds his chicken is Nitro Extreme.
Well, I do. I really do, Dr. Shealy, because she was, she wasn't doing well, and so I put her on Nitro Extreme, just a small amount, and she, within a few days, she came back to her old self, and then I decided, okay, let's see what happens if I take her off it. Well, I took her off it, and she started failing again, so I put her back on it, and she's fine again. So, does it work? I think it does. I mean, and I'm not, I'm not willing to not put her on it. I want to make sure she's, stays around with us because this is one of those animals that when I go out and have coffee in the morning on the veranda, my favorite chicken comes over and she wants a hug, and the dogs want a hug, and the cats want a hug, and John Statmiller used to refer to it as, what did he say? Kind of like a zoo that we have, and all the animals just come around the zookeeper. But anyway, that's what we do. And nitric oxide or Kyani's Nitro Extreme is what I take, my mom takes, Mrs. Finelli takes, our children take, and some of our animals take it, and it seems to work really, really well for us. Dr. Shealy, Tom is producing the broadcast in Minnesota, and we're broadcasting live from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, MD, PhD, Native American medicine man, author of over 28 books, a researcher, Surgeon of the Year, farmer, broadcaster. The list goes on and on and on. So that's who's with us every Wednesday for 2 hours. And if you'd like to call in, we have a call-in line for our class. It's 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933 if you'd like to talk with Dr. Norman Shealy. Dr. Shealy, I wanted to mention this. I've got some posts on the website, and this one is very, very sad. One of our instructors, Lynette Pate, she's the organic guru. She was at the Get Prepared Expo. She's been at several of our expos. Her father was murdered.
Oh, my gosh.
In Arkansas.
Oh, dear.
And I just saw this information last night. He was murdered on the 20th of this month. And it looks like three 20-year-old individuals were involved and were arrested for this. He was found with a gunshot to the head. His automobile was stolen and found burned. And I don't have much more information than that. But here's what I wanted to share and discuss with you. There's a rash of killings, senseless killings, in this country. I have never seen or heard anything like this in my entire life, where people are just being murdered because other young people think that it's fun to do this.
Yeah, this is serious.
Yeah, Dr. Shealy, do you have any thoughts on what is making us do this? Is it the economy?
It starts at the top.
Yeah.
There's no question. The way in which the narcissistic psychopaths handle this is clearly a signal to people who have no conscience to go crazy.
Now, it's interesting that you mention that, because as we speak right now, 9% of Americans support attacking Syria. 9%. And it looks like, I heard a report this morning, just before the broadcast on another network, that there is a 99% certainty that we are going to attack Syria.
Yeah.
Because we believe that there is some probability that chemical weapons were used. Now, who makes chemical weapons? I guess that would be us, right? We make chemical weapons. And I'm not convinced that we were not involved in this attack in some way, shape, or form. So what our government is saying is we need to attack these guys. They killed about 1,300 people, so we need to go over there and blow them up so they don't kill some more. I mean,
More insanity. More insanity. That's all we could say. I mean, this is, Vince, it goes back, in my opinion, actually to the Korean War. This country went crazy when we intervened in the Korea War. We went slightly crazier when we intervened in the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. We went crazier yet when we intervened in Afghanistan and Iraq. And now this is the ultimate psychotic behavior to attack Syria, in my opinion.
I have to agree, Dr. Shealy, and I'm thinking, what would happen if, let's say, one of us, okay, let's say, well, just as an example, let's say somebody in our class said, you know what, in the neighboring county, there's a guy, and we think he might have some explosives. We're not sure if it's really him or maybe it's somebody else, but he's in that county. So we're going to go over there and we're just going to blow up the county because, we need to make sure everybody's safe. So we'll just evaporate.
Insanity knows no bounds.
Well, isn't that like what we're talking about? We're
course.
talking about using the United States military, the Air Force, bombers, missiles, rockets, the Army, and it's going to be a limited conflict. Yeah. That means a limited
1,300,000.
Limited mass murder.
Yeah.
Limited mass murder is what we're... Dr. Shealy, I'd like to share this with you before we go into the break. I know a young man who, he was in Virginia, and we saw him grow up, and we saw him as a young man, and we saw him for many, many years, a wonderful family. And he joined the military, and he joined the Navy. And he was on the fast track, and, when he had leave, he would come over and say hi to us, and I'd ask him what he's up to and what he's doing, and he told us that he was training. He was the guy who would enter the coordinates for the guns, the Navy guns on the ships, and that was his job. So I said to him, well, have you ever thought about what happens when those explosives land after you fire them, after you enter the coordinates? What happens when they land and explode and detonate? The mass killing that results due to the entering of your coordinates. And it must have had some impact on him because he became a chaplain after that. I'm very serious. He switched to becoming the person who entered the coordinates for mass killing, to become a chaplain, the opposite extreme of being in the U.S. Navy. So, Dr. Shealy, I think we're on a really bad course. We said a couple of years ago that one of the outcomes for the designing of the collapse of our economy would be ultimately war. And here we are. We are right on the brink of attacking a small country that we have no business spending any time attacking. Those are just my thoughts.
Well, we've been, to me, this one could be bigger than all the others that we've been in the last 60-plus years. Because, interestingly, of course, Russia strongly opposes this idea. So this could be a trigger beyond the Cold War. And to me, it will go down in history in infamy. I think this is Hitler-esque in its own concept.
Sure. And Dr. Shealy, this has got to rub you the wrong way to the extreme, because all your life you've been on the opposite end of the spectrum, the healing business, the mentoring business, the good side to the extreme. And here we are talking about annihilation of people, vaporization of people, maiming. I mean, just the sound of concussions. This is extreme. And I guess the tone of my voice is that I can't believe it. I can't believe how the depth of the insanity of this administration is just beyond belief. What are they thinking? Who are these people?
That's the operant word, Vince. They're not thinking. They're behaving like animals. And I'm talking about wild animals.
Yes. I'm really at a loss for words, Dr. Shealy. I'm thinking about all of this insanity. I mentioned before, people are losing it. We had a washout. We had a massive rain for about a month, and it wiped out some of our barbed wire fence that crosses a creek that actually crosses the road. And during the repair of this barbed wire fence, we had steel fence posts attached to the barbed wire. People stole the fence posts while we're repairing the fence. This is crazy. Absolute crazy. Dr. Norman Shealy, Vincent Finelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. Shealy, my health insurance, I was able to get it down by about 50% because I switched carriers. And now it's back up. It's up another 25%. I just got notice. It's going up another 25% from last year. But if I increase my deductible from $7,500 to $10,000, it'll only go up a little bit. It won't go up 25%. It'll just go up a little bit, maybe 8%. Dr. Shealy, my health insurance has gone up every year for the last 5 years. And it's not like what they say inflation is, 1%. It goes up massively. It is absolutely out of control.
It's part of the overall insanity.
Yeah.
There's just no way that we can justify the expense of the medical system today, especially when we consider that probably, and I'm being conservatively, that 60% of what's done would be better not done. And I think 40% might be valuable.
Dr. Shealy, when you first started, when you first started your private practice? Can you tell us about when that was? What year?
Well, let's say I finished my training April 30th of 1963. So I would say May 1st, 1963 is the time when I officially, was out of the student status.
And I'm just wondering, if someone came to see you, did you have an office at that time?
I was on the faculty at Western Reserve Medical School, so I was being paid a base salary.
Mm-hmm.
By the way,
what I'm wondering,
for your information, just so you can, that was about $32,000 then, as a board-certified neurosurgeon.
Board-certified neurosurgeon making $32,000 a year.
Yeah.
Dr. Shealy, I'm just trying to get a feel for what a doctor's appointment, a doctor's visit would cost the patient back then. Do you have a feel for what that might have been?
Oh, I would imagine, just for a visit, it might have been $75.
Okay. $75. And how long would that visit have been?
Well, I never spent less than an hour with a new patient.
1 hour. Is that legal?
Well, you see, now in the emergency situation, of course, no, because then you rush to do something. But when I am seeing, and this has been true throughout my career, for a new patient, I do not feel that I could do an adequate job even beginning to know what to recommend without spending an hour. And a return visit, unless it's unequivocally something that, is very simple like acupuncture, it had to be at least 30 minutes.
Well, I know several of your patients, and one of them, the initial visit was 2.5 hours, Dr. Shealy. I know that for a fact.
Well, when I first moved down here, one of the people I hired came to me, and she said, I was told by other doctors I shouldn't come to work for you because you spend too much time with patients.
Well, Dr. Shealy, seriously, this individual who will remain nameless had been to the hospital in Springfield, and they said, okay, you have this gastrointestinal problem, and we're going to put you on this med. And this person gained, doubled in size, literally doubled in size. And it was out of control. I mean, within a year, he was double the size that he had been. And he went to see you, and you took him off all of these absolutely required medications that he needed to survive. You took him off all of them, put him on probiotics, GR8 Adophilus, and some other supplements, and he's fine. He's fine. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is I've been told by my doctor many years ago that if I didn't take the medications he was prescribing for me, I would die. Well, I don't take any of them anymore. And it's been a long time since I've taken them. And he got me in the emergency room twice. We'll be right back. I'm looking at a post on the internet, and it says, sick of city life, America's top 10 small towns to live in offer a slower pace. Although from these pictures, it might be a little bit too quiet. Now, they're saying that you can move out of the city and move into one of these small towns. Now, the number one town that they recommend is Sharon, Massachusetts. Population, 18,000. Medium home price, $375,000. And just to put in perspective, I think these guys, this article is really inaccurate. And I'll tell you why. The median home price in the little community where I live is probably less than $100,000. That'd be the median price. And this town of 18,000 is 180 times the size of the little town that I live in. So if you want peace and quiet, I don't think I'd move to a town of 18,000. Dr. Shealy, the town that you live in is nowhere near 180,000, is it?
614 in the town 5 miles away.
Yeah, it's 614 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the town that's the nearest town to me has 100 people in it, and I'm not in town. I'm outside of the town. So, Dr. Shealy and I live in the middle of nowhere. Now, that really is peace and quiet. So, a town of 180,000 is, boy, that's a bustling metropolis, if you ask me. Dr. Shealy, this morning, the alarm went off, and I got up out of bed and walked across the bedroom. I keep the alarm clock way, way away from us. Anyway, so it went off, and so here's the question. I was thinking, when the alarm clock goes off, you have like three choices. One is try to ignore it, which is impossible. The second choice is to get up and turn off the alarm clock. The third is to hit the snooze bar. Now, if you hit the snooze bar on our particular alarm clock, it gets you another 10 minutes. And here's the question. Is that 10 minutes worth doing? Is it worth going back to bed for that 10 minutes? Because in my cases, it's, oh boy, I think I got 9 minutes left. I think I got 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left. I'm counting down. I go, oh, geez, there it goes again. Am I better off, or are we collectively, on average, better off just saying, oh, the heck with it, let's just get up, versus getting that partial 10 minutes of extra sleep?
Actually, not even having an alarm, just getting up automatically. I do not use an alarm clock. My body says when it's 5 a.m., I wake up, it's time to get up. Mm-hmm. But if I had an alarm, I would want to get rid of it ASAP. Because I think...
And tell us why, Dr. Shealy. Tell us why.
Well, it's a shock to the nervous system. Now, you can get those that come on with very gentle music, and that's probably not such a shock. But I don't think you want, an emergency alarm to start your day, personally.
and they don't call it the gentle awakening. They call it the alarm. They really do. It's an alarm clock. And according
to Hans Selye, an alarm reaction is a major stress reaction with at least a doubling of output of adrenaline, essentially.
Okay, so Tom's our producer. Tom, if I missed the broadcast tomorrow, because if I miss the broadcast tomorrow, Tom, just start without me, please.
We'll see what we can do.
Just tell your mind when you go to bed, I wish to awaken at whatever hour. Do that a few nights.
Okay,
you can train.
I'm going to do that.
You can literally train your brain.
Okay, I will do that starting tomorrow. Tonight, I'm just going to say, here's the time I want to awaken, and I'll give you a full report next week. Seriously. I do like the idea of knowing approximately what time it is. But I'm going to try it. I really am. So, Dr. Shealy, after the meetup on Monday night, what happens is we leave the meetup at Ziggy's, and a lot of us just kind of congregate in the parking lot because nobody really wants to, we all like hanging out with each other. And it's a great group of people in the class and the instructors. And a lot of times some of the instructors and the students hang out, and we spend another 15, 20 minutes in the parking lot. One of the things that came up was kind of a surprise to me. Two of the instructors were telling this small group that there was a suicide in our community, in the greater Springfield community. One of the instructor's friends, a man, decided that he was going to take his life, and he called his mother and said, and basically said goodbye, and then he killed himself. And it was very, very quick. There was the mother had no idea that that's what he was going to do. He just killed himself and left his children as survivors. Dr. Shealy, I'm hearing more and more and more of this. And Roy Birdsong, one of our instructors, was telling us at the meetup that people are really depressed. And when they come into his store, they're depressed about everything. They're depressed about the economy. They're depressed about Obamacare. They're depressed about trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet. And what has happened is Roy Birdsong's store, the Choose Your Own Wireless Cellular telephone store has become like a hangout for when we don't have meetups. Students and instructors just swing by because he's a friendly guy and he's got some places for everybody can congregate and sit down, and that's what they do. So he learns these things from his customers and friends and people that stop by, and suicides seem to be on the up, and so does depression. I mean, serious depression. People just don't know which way to turn at this point. Are you hearing the same kinds of rumblings in...
Well, I sense that it's happening. You know, no matter how bad anything is, personally, I cannot condone or even think about the possibility of suicide. It's one thing to escape from your own trauma, but that leaves so many wounded people behind that I pray that people will think, if they can't think about their own body, all their relatives and friends, most of whom will grieve.
And how about those that claim suicide is like revenge against someone else? Like, I'll fix that person, I'll kill myself.
Yeah, some people do it in other ways. Many, many years ago, about 76 or 7, the secretary of one of the royal houses of Europe was brought to me, literally moribund practically, with cancer. And she hated her husband with such passion. And I said, Annie, forgive the man. He's impossible, she said, until death did them part. She wanted him to feel guilty about her dying of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, it's not quite what I call sanity.
Yeah. So, Dr. Shealy, would she have done better? Would she have lived longer had she forgave him or forgave him and not harbored that anger?
Let's talk about another one who came to me in 1974. A woman who had been told his family had been told that she had 2 months to live.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with her, and on the 17th day, she got well. This woman who was essentially in a wheelchair or a stretcher, brought into the room, got up and walked out free of pain. It took another 1.5 years for her to tell me what happened. I was out in California actually to talk at the hospital where she had been unsuccessfully treated. And she picked me up at the airport. We're driving down to the hospital, and she said, I want to tell you what happened. During that exercise, I suddenly realized how much I hated my family, and I decided I'm not going to let the bastards kill me. And she got well, and her husband committed suicide. But
So what we're talking about is these ill feelings, the anger, the pent-up hostilities toward others is something that can really harm us.
Well, that brings us to me, one of the most important studies ever done. Dr. Hans Eysenck, Eysenck, and a colleague from Heidelberg studied 13,000 plus people over a period of 20 years. And they analyzed these people who were reasonably healthy at the start of the study, but they analyzed their basic personality, and they divided them into 4 categories. Category 1 was people who had been depressed all of their lives. Category 2 were people who had been angry all of their lives. Category 3 couldn't make up their minds whether they were more angry or more depressed. I call them bi. And Category 4, he called autonomous, or I would have called self-actualized. Over the 20 years that they followed them, 75% of the people who died of cancer were type 1 depressed, 15% type 2 angry, 9% type 3 both. 75% of people who died of heart attack were type 2 angry, 15% type 1 depressed, 9% both. So basically, 90 99% of those who died of heart attack or cancer had lifelong periods of anger and or depression.
Wow, absolutely startling. 99% of those who died of heart attack or cancer were either depressed or angry for their lives. Lifelong depression or anger. Dr. Norman Shealy, Vincent Finelli, USAPrepares.com. When we come back, I'd like to ask him about counting sheep as a way of falling asleep. Does it work? We'll be right back. Dr. Shealy's with us, and when I was growing up, if I couldn't fall asleep, my dad would tell me about counting sheep, and he would say, you know, close your eyes and visualize a fence, a split rail fence, and very slowly these sheep would just slowly leap over that fence, and you can kind of count them. 1, 2, and eventually you'll fall asleep. Dr. Shealy, it absolutely works for me. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's no question, because what you're doing is quieting the idle chatter of the mind. I love, actually, the Sanskrit word chitta. It sounds more than even the word chatter. And, of course, the whole purpose of self-regulation, which I began to study back in 1972, is to train the mind to let go of senseless, irrelevant, unproductive, idle mind wandering. It's a habit that many people get into. And, of course, there are many to it. In fact, I got my whole doctoral dissertation in psychology looking at the worldwide approach to self-regulation and understanding, you know, how different societies in different times, different people have come to this same conclusion. In the later 70s, Herb Benson, who originally was quite struck on the concept of transcendental meditation, pushing it. But he soon realized that abadabadu in Sanskrit is no different from I am, love, focusing on a positive word. It's all that it takes. A positive word, a positive image, repeatedly done, can calm down the savage beast.
Very interesting. And those who meditate, Dr. Shealy, I have found they are smarter. They are more intelligent. They're more deliberate than those who do not meditate.
And they're healthier.
Interesting.
Very
interesting. Dr. Shealy, when I was at the meetup on Monday, I did something that I've never done before. I talked to the class. What happens, class, if you want to imagine what these meetups are like, think of a restaurant that holds between 160 and 200 people. And there are people coming and going to the restaurant that are not part of our group. Very few. Most everybody that shows up on Monday is part of our group. And we have a PA system, and we have a projector screen, or we show a video, or we have a speaker, or we do both, or we have 3 speakers. And we started around 5:30, and we have kind of a fellowship half hour or so. And then around 6 o'clock, I get up to the microphone and I make some announcements and some observations and things that I see happening, and I share them with the group. And on Monday, I said, over the period of the last 60 days, how many of you are more tired, more lethargic, having a tougher time getting started on that project, looking at the prerequisites to that project? So before we can start that project, think of it like maybe we're going to do some painting. Before we do the painting, we've got to move a bunch of stuff. And before we do that, then we have to wash the walls. And then, and then there's like 4 or 5 prerequisites, and we got to get the paint, and the paint stirs. And, it's just too much. Just forget it. How many of us are lethargic, are having a tougher time starting the project, staying with the project, finishing the project. In the last 60 days, I've noticed that it's getting tougher. How many are experiencing that same thing? Dr. Shealy, when we come back, can you address, are you seeing that also? I'm attributing it to the sun. I'm attributing it to the solar rays. And I'd like to correlate that to toilets not flushing as well. When we come back, Dr. Shealy, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, hour number 1, I mentioned that at the meetup, I asked the group if they're tired, lethargic, having trouble starting, having trouble getting motivated. And I asked for a raise of hands, and I was absolutely surprised at the number of people who said, yeah, I am having trouble getting started. And I mentioned that I think that there's something going on, a correlation between the really, really strong rays of the sun and this phenomenon that we're having trouble getting motivated. And then I said, this isn't really dinner discussion, but have you noticed, how many of you have noticed that toilets don't flush as well as they used to? Is it just something that I'm seeing as an anomaly, or do you see it also? And a lot of people said, yeah, you're right. So I'm wondering if there's something going on with the sun, thinning the atmosphere, altering the pressure down here on Earth that's affecting toilets flushing and is affecting the ability for us to get motivated. Dr. Shealy, do you see any of these signs that I'm talking about?
Well, actually, I have felt over the last 3 years a growing irritability of the cosmos, if you will, that I think is affecting everybody. Mm-hmm. And of course, the current sunspot activity began roughly 2.5 years ago. So we're in right near the peak activity of this particular 11-year cycle of sunspots, and it's been, correlated many, many, many times with human craziness, perhaps even more closely than full moons. So, yeah, there is a need during this kind of cosmic activity for people really to learn to detach.
And how do we do that, Dr. Shealy? How do we get through this period of irritability?
I think number 1 is air bliss. Number 2 is air bliss. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is autogenic training. Those air bliss and autogenic training, if people will really use them, can really help almost everything.
Air bliss, I've said it many times. I'll just say it very briefly today. Dr. Shealy broadcasts on a local radio station and has for a couple decades, over a couple decades in the Springfield community. And one day he saw me coming into the radio station before my broadcast. Now, his broadcast was from 2 o'clock to 3, and that's when he broadcasts every Thursday. And my broadcast was following his. So as soon as he hopped out of his seat behind the microphone, I hopped on. And he saw me and he thought that, gee, this guy's pretty nervous. His knees are knocking. And he decided he was going to help me. And he offered Air Bliss, AIR, space BLISS. It is a blend of essential oils that Dr. Shealy has formulated, and he's tested this to see how it works with people who have symptoms of being anxious. Well, I tried it right then and there, and I'll tell you what, I was not anxious after that. As a matter of fact, I walked right out of the studio on air. I just left. And the producer, Rob Evans at the time, sports broadcaster, was running the board, and Dr. Shealy was there, and they kind of took over. So, and I came back a little while later, a short while later, but I was so unconcerned about being there, and I was so relaxed. I thought, I don't need, I can just go, and I just left, and I was goofy. I was really goofy. So I use Bliss before the broadcast. I apply it to between my thumb and my forefinger on both hands, and there we go. So if you think that that might help you, Air Bliss, and you can get that from Dr. Shealy's website directly from, just go to normshealy.com. normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy, you're traveling around the country talking about the benefits of the 5 different varieties of Bliss, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I consider it my most important development. And, I've learned, you've probably heard me say, you can have sex in public square if you know what to call it. I've actually learned what to call it. Transcutaneous acupuncture. I had submitted papers on this material to several journals and had them turned down. So about a month ago, when I created the term transcutaneous acupuncture, I submitted it to the Southern Medical Association, the 3rd largest medical group in the country, and it's been accepted for presentation at their big meeting at the end of October. So calling it transcutaneous acupuncture makes it much more acceptable than use of essential oils.
Dr. Shealy, when you developed this, can you tell us a little bit about why you developed this? Because you did study acupuncture, you do believe that it works, and how did you go from acupuncture to applying essential oils on the acupuncture points?
Well, it's a slow process, because I really started putting needles in the mid-'60s. And then very quickly I started attaching electrical stimulators to the needles, which certainly increased the effectiveness of the acupuncture needles tremendously. And then in 1993, I visited the Ukraine and learned about what they call microwave resonance therapy, which is actually application to the skin of, without needles, of electrical stimulation at a very high frequency, human DNA frequency, 54 to 78 billion cycles per second. And as I began working with that, I intuitively developed these 5 circuits that I call rings. I mean, it fits with my whole concept of human energy. And we proved that stimulating these 5 rings, each of which has specific acupuncture points that are very different from the other rings, we proved that each of them has a very specific biochemical effect. The first one I developed was fire, which raises DHEA, which is tremendously helpful clinically in depression, in rheumatoid arthritis, in migraine, in diabetic neuropathy. The second one was air, and originally I found that it raises neurotensin, which is a neuroleptic, which does help you to attach, but I missed until the last couple of years that it also raises oxytocin, which is great for anxiety and depression. Then came water, which balances aldosterone, which is responsible for keeping your water and potassium balance correct, edema, swelling. Then came earth, where we raise calcitonin, and that is the strongest pain reliever that the body produces, but also critical for bone strength. And then finally, the ring of crystal, which, when stimulated, reduces free radicals 80%. That is, nothing else in the world comes close to reducing free radicals so well. The problem with electrical stimulation, I figured after 10 years, is that most people won't do it because it takes 20 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. And therefore, a couple of years ago, I began looking at what can we do that will work at least as well, that doesn't take so much time. And so that's how the oils came about. And they really do stimulate the acupuncture points. You can taste the oil long before you finish putting them on all the points of the rings.
That's absolutely true. And Dr. Shealy, I'd like to explain what you mean by that, if I may. Class, when I put 1 drop of Air Bliss between my thumb and forefinger, and then I transfer that 1 drop so that it's on the corresponding, the other hand, in the same spot, I can literally taste in my mouth the oils that I've applied to 1 drop to each of my hands. I'm not saying that I put this oil in my mouth. I can taste it as it transfers through my body. Literally, I'm not kidding.
It's absorbed through the skin. Now, the interesting thing, of course, Vince, is that you're very sensitive, obviously, because some people will need it on more points than that. On the other hand, Hoku, or large intestine 4, which is the spot you're using, is energetically the strongest acupuncture point in the human body. And therefore, theoretically, by stimulating that point, you really do have a more generalized physiological effect than any other point you could put it on.
Well, that explains it then, Dr. Shealy, because that's all I need. And literally, as the introduction to the broadcast is starting up, and I hear it on my headphones, unscrewing the cap, and, I put it on, and there's this big grin on my face. Really. And it's that fast. It is that fast for me. And we had a young lady, actually a girl, an elementary school girl who was a real handful, and a pleasant handful, just a delightful young girl. And her grandmother called and said that, school was really complaining, and they wanted to probably put this young person on medications to calm her down, because she had ants in her pants and she's just squirming around, and she's kind of hyperactive, and they wanted to slow her down into a full coma. And so she came to the girl's mother and the grandmother, and the girl came to the meetup, and I let them know that they could certainly try mine and see what happened. And they couldn't believe. I just let her hold it, and she smelled it, and she thought it was interesting, and she put 2 drops on her and on herself, and man, oh man, within a minute, she was calm, and it worked, and they couldn't wait to buy some. So I've seen experiences like this time after time after time, and our instructors have tried it. Same thing. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. I just heard a commercial for being part of the sales department for Genesis Communications Network. I just counted. There's 73 of us. Can you imagine? What it'd be like working with 73 of us? And I think that'd be a blast. I really do. So you might want to consider that. Dr. Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, just before the broadcast, we received a question from a young man, 26 years old. And when he was a child, 14 to 15 years old, he lifted something that was probably too heavy. And as a result, he has progressive back pain, and it hurts more and more. And he might have, what he says, he thinks he might have a pinched nerve. And he goes to a chiropractor for treatment. Do you have any thoughts of what that might be? And that's all the information that I have.
Well, if it's not 50% or more minimum improved within 3 chiropractic adjustments, and that's not, in my opinion, going to work long term. Something that works, in my experience, at least as well and often, better, is a Roman chair. It's a particular device. I've had one for over 30 years, in which, and you can buy them on the internet now for $89. You have a support that holds your ankles when you're upside down, and then a little panel up front, and you bend down. So from the pubic bone, you bend forward. I call it backups. And so you just hang first to stretch the back, and then use the muscles of the back to strengthen those muscles along the spine. That can be very helpful for a lot of people. If that doesn't work, one other big possibility is something called a sacral shear, which is a rotation of the sacrum itself. That's fixable in 30 seconds. Unfortunately, most chiropractors don't know that, but DOs do. If this person is in the Springfield area, there is a wonderful DO here, Edward Douglas, who would be the one I would recommend.
Okay, so how do you spell that, Dr. Shealy, that you'd like the DO to take a look at?
I'm sorry?
How do you spell that?
Edward, Edward, Douglas, Douglas.
And he's a DO.
Now, is this a young person that you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he's not. But he's not in the Springfield community.
Oh, he's not in the Springfield community. Okay, then you need to find a DO who does osteopathic work. Only 10% of them do. Don't waste your time and money going to a DO who's not a real DO.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, you had mentioned, we were talking about fleas and ticks and those kinds of problems that we have on our farms with our animals, and especially those who come into our homes, like our dogs. And I contacted the CEO of Cedarside, and you had recommended that. And I got my box of Cedarside, and I applied it to a couple of our dogs to see what the difference would be, those that I applied it to versus those who didn't get Cedarside. I'm happy to report that fleas can't stand it. They absolutely cannot stand the Cedarside, and they want to get away from it. And is that what you saw when you've applied Cedarside to your dogs?
Absolutely. It's phenomenal for ants also.
Ants, okay.
Oh, yeah. I this summer, a couple months ago, I had an invasion of ants. They found a little hole outside the house, right up between the roof and the wood just below that. And by spraying in that, I got rid of them. I mean, I had hundreds of thousands of ants invading and eating the insulation above my office. They're gone. And it was all
great.
And it smells good.
Well, our house now smells like cedar as the dogs walk through. It smells like cedar wherever they are, and it's working. And that's Friday. Matt Jones is going to be with us. He's the CEO of Cedarside.com, and we'll tell you more about that on Friday. We'll talk about how to get it. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. Dr. Shealy, I was talking with one of our instructors, and he has a family member who works in a hospital, and this family member is in the newborn area of the hospital, and what they have noticed is a significant increase in chromosomal damage. And they're likening, or they're tracing it to what they believe is Fukushima. The radiation from Fukushima causing chromosomal damage in babies that are just being born. If that's the case, Dr. Shealy, we know that we can take iodoral, but at some point, now I was talking with another instructor. I was talking with Mike Parsons last night. And he and I were discussing, what do we do? I mean, if the radiation from Fukushima becomes so bad that we have to relocate, does it make sense to go to South America? is this a planet killer, Dr. Shealy? How bad do you think this is?
I read the book On the Beach back in 1961 when I was actually living in Australia. And it essentially foreshadowed the possibility that our stupidity could wipe out most people. I felt since then, at least, and probably well before that, that the most insane thing that the human race has ever done is create nuclear energy, because we don't know how to take care of the waste or to protect it from things like this. And I think that if we talk about survival, the number one, in my opinion, risk to life in general is nuclear energy. It's crazy that we have it, that we allow it. It was crazy enough to invent it in the first place, but without knowing what to do with the waste product, it's insanity. And so I think Fukushima is a warning, and hopefully if this one doesn't do it, it'll be enough of a warning that at least all nuclear power plants will be shut down as quickly and safely as possible. So there's no question. It's interesting. I wonder. I mean, we know that, of course, you can protect your thyroid to a large extent by using adequate iodine in this kind of situation. But the rest of our cells and organs are not protected that much by iodine. It makes me wonder whether nitric oxide would be a better protector for the body as a whole. And that's because of the information that came out just a couple of days ago. Nitric oxide can regulate gene expression. It can do a major chemical epigenetic approach to helping our DNA survive, if you will. It protects against abnormal methyl changes in the DNA, which are often associated with cancer and other problems. So, it'd probably be a decade before research will be done on this. But in the meantime, just as I already have believed now for well over a year that everybody should be taking Nitro Extreme because it's the single most effective nitric oxide enhancer that we know, I think even more so in a situation like this that people should be on Nitro Extreme.
Dr. Shealy, all the indications that I'm reading and learning about are telling me that it's much, much worse than anyone has admitted to us previously. And the Japanese government, TEPCO, they've lied to the Japanese people. Thyroid cancer, thyroid tumors are increasing at an increasing rate in Japan. There are even those who believe that Japan as an island will cease to exist with people living on it because of the amount of radiation. And there are even the thoughts that if we're buying tires, Yokohama tires and Firestone tires and Bridgestone those and so forth from Japan, if they're manufactured there and they're in an environment that's radioactive, that those radioactive atoms will be here in the rubber in the tires and will go airborne as those tires are consumed by the friction of the tires on the highways, and we're going to be breathing those radioactive substances, and none of it's any good. None of it. So it's in the air. Not just from the tires, it's in the air. It's circling the globe. It's in our food. It's in the oceans. Dr. Shealy, we need to grow our own food, don't we?
Well, I've been saying that, of course, for 50 years. Even when I lived in the city of Cleveland Heights, our backyard was a garden. And if you have a city lot, you've got enough. If you've got an ordinary Sydney lot, your backyard should be 90% garden, and I don't mean lawn, I mean flowers, I mean food. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the governments are trying to stop us from growing gardens. There's a 4-year-old who's growing a little tiny garden in public housing, and the rules say she can't do it. So the government is clamping down.
Since when has the government been sane? Name me one thing you think
I can't say they haven't gotten a single thing right. I mentioned to Mrs. Finelli that I just might go on a tear today and talk about the current administration. I might go on a tear and talk about Michelle Obama tearing up the White House lawn to put in a garden, and while at the same time the governments all across this country are stopping people from growing gardens in their front yard. The city of Orlando was fining a family $500 a day because they were growing a garden in the front yard. And I called the city of Orlando, and I found out who it was, and I let them know I was going to do a full report on what they're up to. And that very day, they decided that they wanted to avoid the heat, and they were going to change the zoning ordinance to allow gardens in Orlando and back off from finding these people.
Oh, you're a saint.
Well, Dr. Shealy, it's really simple. The tactics that I use are the same tactics that I've been taught by them. What they do is they will, if they're going to pull somebody over with a police car, it's not one car, it's multiple cars. And they arrive in force, and they intimidate, and they single us out. They pick on one of us at a time. They show up in force at one of our houses at a time. So those very tactics that they've taught me are the same tactics that I use. I say, hey, hi, I'm Vincent Finelli. I'm with, and I'll just mention a radio station I happen to be on, and I'm doing some investigative reporting, and I know the other side. I'd like to hear your side because I'm going on the air in about an hour. And I get the phone numbers, okay, and may I have the cell phone number? And then what I do is I talk to that person, and then I give out their cell phone numbers, and I say, here's the number. Give them a call. Tell them whatever you think. And they can't take it. They hate it because what I've done is I've singled them out, Dr. Shealy, and we use the power of the media to do exactly what they do to us. They pick on us in mass, and then we turn it around and we do it to them. And they hate it. They absolutely hate it. They're a bunch of weak pansies that can't take the pressure, but they like beating us up when they gang up on us. They enjoy that, but they don't like it when we turn it around on them. I hit my own button.
Take out the bliss. Take a deep breath and start counting sheep.
Oh, jeez. So, Dr. Shealy, is this a concern that we should be in full-blown detox mode right now, or do we have a little bit of time before we start detoxifying our bodies?
Oh, I think we should be doing that constantly anyway, of course. Okay. But obviously, right now is a prime example of constant vigilance and constant activity. Even in the best of circumstances, I take a castor oil bath once a week. That's one of my favorites.
Tell us about how to do that. How do we do that?
It's very easy. You get a pint of castor oil, and you fill your bathtub with hot water, pleasantly, what you're going to soak in. You put a half a cup of in the water, slosh it around, and your skin loves oil. So It's attracted to the skin. The oil is partially absorbed through the skin and cleanses the lymph system. And if you really want to do it, optimally, you might put a few drops of white rose oil in as well. But you soak in it 20 or 30 minutes. Now, very important, you must have a bottle of cheap shampoo. You can buy them for 99 cents. Because it's going to take at least a half of that bottle when you let the water out of the tub to wash you and the tub and rinse it twice before you get out of the tub. So don't slip and break your gazoo. But I've been doing this for many years. Of course, just a hot soak to sweat is good. A sauna or any kind of sweating is, to me, the natural detox way. Obviously, drinking lots of non-city real water is good, of course, too.
Okay, so a half a cup of castor oil in a warm bath, soak 20 to 30 minutes, and then drain it, and then use shampoo. I assume non-scented if possible, shampoo to get the oils off your body and rinse twice. Okay, so you see, ultimately you want that castor oil off you. Can you use?
Interestingly, even then you'll have an extremely thin layer, but not enough to stain your clothes. But the effect is at least 12 hours of continuing detox.
All right. How about detoxifying your colon or a colon cleanse with olive oil and vinegar?
I think if you have normally 2 decent soft bowel movements a day, I'm not a big colonic detox person. My colon does not wish to be overstimulated.
Okay. Dr. Norman Shealy and I'll be back. NormShealy.com, N-O-R-M as in Norman, Shealy, SHEALY.com. And you can sign up for his free newsletter. We'll be right back. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. On the 15th of this month, August 15th, I gave... on August 15th, I gave out the telephone number for the CEO's office for General Electric. These are the guys that have littered the planet with nuclear reactors, for which there is no solution, no safe solution for the disposing of the waste. And I'm not talking about, we're talking about waste that there is no answer for. There is no answer. This stuff is deadly for thousands and thousands of years. So I gave out the telephone number for the CEO. His name is Jeffrey Immelt, I-M-M-E-L-T. You've probably heard that name on the mainstream media. Well, I just called the number during the break, and there's no one there to take my call. Now, I can't believe it. I'm calling corporate headquarters for General Electric, one of the largest corporations in the world. There's nobody there. Come on. I have a feeling, I may be wrong, but I have a feeling it had something to do.
You can say there's nothing there in their head to start with, so why?
Well, greed. There's greed. They've got room for greed in their heads. But Dr. Shealy, I gave out this number, and this number doesn't seem to work so well anymore. There's no one there to take my call, but they'll take my message, but they won't take my call. So let me give it to you. If you'd like to call Jeffrey Immelt, he's the CEO of General Electric, 203-373-2211. 203-373-2211. One more time, 203-373-2211. Make sure, that you give that number to your friends and family. And my question, had I connected with them, would have been, so, Jeff, what are we going to do about these reactors? What are we going to do? And what are we going to do about the waste? And by the way, what day would you like to come on? And we'll spend as much time as you'd like. We'll make sure as many people know about it as possible. We will promote that you'll be on the air. We just want to know a couple things. What are you going to do about the reactors, and what are we going to do about the waste?
Almost
That's
as
it.
good as
Simple
putting
as
in public stocks.
Well, Dr. Shealy, we are having we're having an experience with these SWAT teams that are going over to people's houses, they're bashing down doors, and we're convinced that when somebody calls 911, either somebody's going to get arrested, someone's going to go to jail, or someone's going to get killed. And I think that whenever these kinds of things happen, every member of the SWAT team, even the guy that's standing, the last guy to bash through the door, even he or she needs to be charged, arrested, jailed, tried, and if convicted, executed in the public square. They are out of control. There's no reason for not using a telephone to call someone and say, hey, look, we got a question for you. We'd love to chat with you. Would you mind coming downtown? Would you mind coming outside and talking to us? They don't need to bash people's doors down. They really don't. They're tasing and killing people. They're executing people. They're shooting people. It's out of control. And speaking of damage, Dr. Shealy, I have in front of me a bottle of Nestle Coffee Mate. I'd like to read some of the ingredients. And would you tell me, last time we did something like this, we lost 15 potential sponsors. But that was our record. Normally it'd been like, we've been averaging maybe 4 at a time. But at the height, it was about 15. So Coffee Mate, French vanilla, sugar is the first ingredient, then water. But let's go right into to the important ones. Partially hydrogenated soybean or cottonseed oil.
2 junk so far.
Junk, okay. How about sodium caseinate?
Junk.
How about propylene glycol?
Junk.
Is that dangerous for us?
Yeah. It's for antifreeze in your automobile, not in your body.
I'm wondering if this has, people who are drinking this have, if part of our lack of energy is something to do with it. How about dipotassium phosphate?
Yeah, no good.
Okay. Well, and then we can get into the artificial and natural flavors, but and the color. And the sucralose. Sucralose, that's dangerous too, isn't it?
That is really bad. That's the worst of all of them, maybe.
There you go. So don't put it in your coffee. That's my advice. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, thanks so much for being with us. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you. And I suggest you consider getting Dr. Shealy's newsletter. normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Comes out a couple times a week, absolutely free.